All right, Sean, I'm not angry, just disappointed. You're really gonna make me make this video. You're really gonna make me sit down here and pick through your ridiculous post. Let's preface this all by saying Sean Pastuch is a genuinely good friend of mine, and I really enjoy him. I enjoy his perspective on things. I enjoy his reflective nature. I enjoy the man he used to be, and I enjoy even more the man he's become. So Sean and I are close. However, we categorically disagree on a number of things. And this post is perfectly representative of where we disagree. Now, he asked to have these conversations in the DMs of the little post here in the thing. I have zero desire to go back and forth via text. It's not my jam. I don't exist well in that space. So I'm making this video because the last time I had to do this, I had to respond to Jillian Michaels, of all people. Garbage fitness influencer. Sean is not a garbage fitness influencer. Sean is an intelligent man and for a long time has intentionally made inflammatory posts in order to be heard. He has not done that in a long time, and I don't think this is actually that. I think this is actually Sean's belief structure. But I'm going to go through the post piece by piece and say why I disagree with each one of those pieces. I'll bring it up here. You know what? I'm just going to record it and I'll pop it up there. Dr. Sean Pastuch, good old doctor. All right, here we go, Shawnee boy. The post is the 5 most functional exercises that are not practical. Now, first off, he's got functional in quotations, and it's a good thing that he does because functional has no meaning if you don't first define functional. Now, what this post tends to describe is one component of functional movements, which is application of them being found in life. So the natural component of functional movements, because a descriptive characteristic of functional movements is that they are found in nature. That is not what makes them functional, and that is not what our community, I'm speaking as a CrossFitter, has ever said made them functional. That is a component, and that is something that a functional movement will tend to be natural, not natural movements are functional. That's a difference there. He also says so you can stop doing them, and I don't think you should stop doing literally any of these, but that's okay. We'll keep going on. So he's got shoulder press, he's got muscle up, he's got Olympic lifts, and he's got deadlifts and barbell squats. Okay, so there's some big ones there. Now, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I honestly disagree with almost his entire post. Even the part where he's talking about the muscle ups and he's like, I actually really like these. Of all of these, the only one I could maybe say you could probably just get rid of, and it is the muscle up. But I disagree with that too. But I'm just saying, like, it's funny. I couldn't disagree with more points in what he's doing here. So let's go through. The evolution of functional fitness made life-changing results from a fitness experience possible for millions of people who would not have gotten them when the gym was a place for bodybuilders only. Cool. Starts off with a positive. He's like, okay, well, I'm going to throw this in there. I'm going to be kind of positive with it. Then he goes, functional fitness got people off machines and started putting people into situations and positions that more emulate and therefore carry over into their real lives. And then it stopped evolving. And to be correct that this was a de-evolution. So the movements that we started doing again, like the squat, the dead, the press, these big barbell and dumbbell and kettlebell movements, these are a de-evolution from what they previously were. So those existed for a long time, and it evolved into machines and isolation. And then it devolved back to a different state. So you're not talking about an evolution that then stopped evolving. We went back to the basics because they were more effective at eliciting the results we were going for. Results in the long run being fitness. We can talk about that in a second. He said, we started then telling people they need to back squat so they could sit and stand from a toilet and a pursuit of a big back squat became the trend. These two things are separate from each other. The pursuit of a big back squat became a trend because people got competent squatting and they enjoyed it, so they continued squatting. And the natural evolution over time of small little bits of progress is that you get better and you might end up with a 300-pound back squat. It was never put on a pedestal by anyone that was at a great gym of that's what you need to have in order to sit on up and down on the toilet. So that is just a straight up misnomer, but okay. That being said, having a 300-pound squat tells me you can sit down and get back up. And one of the bigger points across all of these is that by building extra capacity, when you decay and age and life happens, you will decay to a place of more capacity. So you won't die with a 300-pound back squat. You'll die with the capacity to sit down and get back up. But if you live your life with just the ability to sit down and get back up, you're on the precipice of not being able to sit down and get back up. Now, 300 pounds is an arbitrary number that you chose that is extreme. And by no means are we saying that everyone has 300-pound squats. And most people in gyms don't have these. So to use it as a thing that we shouldn't pursue it's just bizarre on all fronts. Next, we suggest deadlifts to help people pick things up from the ground, even though most of the time things we would pick up are asymmetrical and force us into positions considered dangerous. They look nothing like the deadlift. No shit! But in a deadlift, you can overload the system in a structurally more sound way so that it carries over to asymmetrical lifts. When you focus on being able to brace with a symmetrical item like a barbell, it overloads the system unique to the barbell because it's a barbell or it's a dumbbell or it's kettlebells, whatever it is. But it is balanced. There's symmetry there, which decreases the potential for injury, which is why you don't go super heavy in like an asymmetrical lift without building capacity first in the symmetrical side of things. So the value is to build the structural integrity and foundation to then lift things asymmetrically. What are you suggesting, that we just when life happens and we need to pick something up that's asymmetrical, we just go for it? It's silly. I don't know what you're trying to focus on here. And to say they look nothing like a deadlift is just categorically false. It looks a lot like a deadlift. It doesn't look like an evenly weighted bar. Yeah. And then we go on to say we started pressing overhead because kitchen shelves are high. That's not why we started pressing overhead. We started pressing overhead to build strength in an overhead press and to build strength in an overhead position. And yes, life requires most things to be out front. But if you just have the range to here, then anytime you would need to go to here, or say you need to use the full complement of the shoulder, which is the capacity to go to here, that's what the shoulder's made to do, you're not going to have that unless you train it. New range is always weak range. So we didn't evolve pressing to put stuff up on shelves. We put stuff up on shelves regardless because we have to, and pressing was a way for us to build range and strength at the end range of the musculature. And then we started to overload that system in an effort to build capacity there. But again, it should start with no load and eventually work its way there. Would you not agree that someone who couldn't press their hands straight up overhead is lacking shoulder range? I don't know. Seems silly and another weird argument. Olympic lifts develop power and help you run fast and jump high. True, just not as effectively as running fast and jumping high do, and with more injury risk and longer skill progression. It's so funny. So like, more injury risk relative to what? Like relative to running and jumping? You're telling me less people get hurt running and jumping than doing the Olympic lifts? Show me the data that proves that running has a lower injury rate than Olympic lifting. Because I'd love to see that. I mean, it could be true because as you increase load, there's an increased potential for risk, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it necessarily. Everything carries with it inherent risk. Now, beyond that even, this last little bit, there's a longer skill progression. That's the reason that we use them. We use them because of the skill progression. We use them because the neurological components required to do these help build a more well-rounded, competent human. to be able to think through the complexity of something complex. We do it because it's complex. The skill progression is necessary for the growth that we're requiring, for the growth that we're looking for. This is crazy. Yes, exactly what you said. Now the last one, muscle ups, they're cool and one of my favorite expressions of fitness. They just don't have much utility. I would say it's one of the least acceptable expressions of fitness in all of this. Very little power production compared to the other lifts that you mentioned. And they don't have much utility that can't be earned in another movement. I would agree with you. But it's just an elite expression of a skill that requires learning. And that's just where you go. It's the natural progression. It's not like we take someone in the gym and say, hey, go get up on a muscle up. It's like, hey, there's this movement out there that's possible. If you get good at everything else, maybe you can advance to that. It's silly to think that like the category you put it in is like, that's what we were telling everyone they have to do. It's like, ugh. That's a silly interpretation of it. Then you have the final paragraph. We traded practicality for functional and forgot the purpose. If you're only thinking of functional as task accomplishment of like, is this found in nature? Then yes, but that's not why we used functional movements. That was a component of it. Then you say, oftentimes by chasing diminishing returns in a proficient movement instead of cleaning up deficiency in an incompetent movement. That is the one part of this post that I will definitely agree upon. Because there are so many movements, we often limit ourselves to very few. And we don't practice being well-rounded across all of them. And thus, we continue to work on movements that we're already pretty proficient in without building capacity in others. I would agree with you on that. A lot of people fail to evolve because they just stick on the same basic things rather than continuing to expand the repertoire and work on things that are also valuable. Now this final bit is, this post is intended to allow you artistic freedom and physical exploration. I don't quite know what that means, but I appreciate you allowing me the artistic freedom and physical exploration. I think we all have that inherently. So you finish things off by, to me, highlighting your point that you're trying to make, which is start considering what you can do for yourself and your clients to be more practical for their daily lives. So this is where I think we and I could have a conversation, because I think we can have a conversation about all of it, but around what you're trying to get people to do is just be better at their daily lives, for sure. But the means with which we achieve that can be done in different ways. And I think your argument here would be that the things that are better are things like strict bodyweight movements, landmines, cables, odd objects, and combative training. I agree that we should do all of those. But I also agree that we should I disagree and think that we can also use shoulder press, muscle up, Olympic lifts, and deadlifts. They're part of a larger training program. And to say you should stop doing them, I don't know if you're intentionally being inflammatory, but this is my response to you. Let's have a conversation about it. Looking forward to chatting.